He surrounded all the children of Midian and set their tents on fire and plundered their sheepfolds. He went down into the plain of Damascus in the days of wheat harvest, and set all their fields on fire, and utterly destroyed their flocks and herds, plundered their cities, laid their plains waste, and struck all their young men with the edge of the sword. And the fear and the dread of him fell upon those who lived on the seacoast, upon those who were in Sidon and Tyre, those who lived in Sur and Okina, and all who lived in Gimnon, those who lived in Azotus and Askelon, feared him exceedingly. The Book of Judith, chapter 3. And they sent to him messengers with words of peace, saying, Behold, we the servants of Nebuchadnezzar the great king lie before you. Use us as it is pleasing in your sight. Behold, our dwellings, and all our country, and all our fields of wheat, and our flocks and herds, and all the sheepfolds of our tents lie before your face. Use them as it may please you. Behold, even our cities and those who dwell in them are your servants. Come and deal with them as it is good in your eyes. So the men came to Holofernes, and declared to him according to these words. He came down towards the seacoast, he and his army, and set garrisons in the high cities, and took out of them chosen men for allies. They received him, they and all the country round about them, with garlands and dances and timbrels. He cast down all their borders and cut down their sacred groves. It had been given to him to destroy all the gods of the land, that all the nations would worship Nebuchadnezzar only, and that all their tongues and their tribes would call upon him as a god. Then he came towards Esdraelon, near to Dotea, which is opposite the great ridge of Judea. He encamped between Geba and Scythopolis. He was there a whole month, that he might gather together all the baggage of his army. The Book of Judith, chapter 4. The children of Israel who lived in Judea heard all that Holofernes, the chief captain of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, had done to the nations, and how he had plundered all their temples and destroyed them utterly. They were exceedingly afraid at his approach, and were troubled for Jerusalem and for the temple of the Lord their God, because they had newly come up from the captivity, and all the people of Judea were recently gathered together, and the vessels, the altar, and the house were sanctified after being profaned. And they sent into every coast of Samaria, to Coneh, to Beth-horon, Belmaim, Jericho, to Kobah, Asora, and to the valley of Salem. And they occupied beforehand all the tops of the high mountains, fortified the villages that were in them, and stored supplies for the provision of war, for their fields were newly reaped. Joachim, the high priest, who was in those days at Jerusalem, wrote to those who lived in Bethulia and Beto-Mesthaim, which is opposite Esdraelon, towards the plain that is near to Dothaim, charging them to seize upon the ascents of the hill country, because by them was the entrance into Judea, and it was easy to stop them from approaching, inasmuch as the approach was narrow, with space for 2 men at the most. And the children of Israel did as Joachim the high priest had commanded them, as did the senate of all the people of Israel, which was in session at Jerusalem. And every man of Israel cried to God with great earnestness, and with great earnestness they humbled their souls. They, their wives, their children, their cattle, and every sojourner, hireling, and servant, bought with their money, put sackcloth on their loins. Every man and woman of Israel, including the little children and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, fell prostrate before the temple, cast ashes upon their heads, and spread out their sackcloth before the Lord. They put sackcloth around the altar. They cried to the God of Israel earnestly with one consent, that he would not give their children as prey, their wives as plunder, the cities of their inheritance to destruction, and the sanctuary to being profaned and being made a reproach. for the nations to rejoice at. The Lord heard their voice and looked at their affliction. The people continued fasting many days in all Judea and Jerusalem before the sanctuary of the Lord Almighty. And Joachim the high priest and all the priests who stood before the Lord and those who ministered to the Lord had their loins dressed in sackcloth and offered the continual burnt offering, the vows, and the free gifts of the people. They had ashes on their turbans. They cried to the Lord with all their power, that he would look upon all the house of Israel for good. The Book of Judith, chapter 5. Holofernes, the chief captain of the army of Ashur, was told that the children of Israel had prepared for war, had shut up the passages of the hill country, had fortified all the tops of the high hills, and had set up barricades in the plains. Then he was exceedingly angry, and he called all the princes of Moab, the captains of Ammon, and all the governors of the seacoast, and he said to them, "Tell me now, you sons of Canaan, who are these people who dwell in the hill country? What are the cities that they inhabit? How large is their army? Where is their power and their strength? What king is set over them to be the leader of their army? Why have they turned their backs, that they should not come and meet me? More than all who dwell in the west." Then Achior, the leader of all the children of Ammon, said to him, "Let my lord now hear a word from the mouth of your servant, and I will tell you the truth concerning these people who dwell in this hill country, near to the place where you dwell. No lie will come out of the mouth of your servant. These people are descended from the Chaldeans. They sojourned before this in Mesopotamia, because they didn't want to follow the gods of their fathers, which were in the land of the Chaldeans. They departed from the way of their parents and worshipped the God of heaven, the God whom they knew. Their parents cast them out from the face of their gods, and they fled into Mesopotamia and sojourned there many days. Then their God commanded them to depart from the place where they sojourned, and to go into the land of Canaan. They lived there and prospered with gold and silver, and with exceedingly much cattle. Then they went down into Egypt, for a famine covered all the land of Canaan. They sojourned there until they had grown up. They became a great multitude there, so that one could not count the population of their nation. Then the king of Egypt rose up against them, and dealt subtly with them, and brought them low, making them labor in brick, and made them slaves. They cried to their God, and he struck all the land of Egypt with incurable plagues, so the Egyptians cast them out of their sight. God dried up the Red Sea before them, and brought them into the way of Sinai Kadesh Barnea, and they cast out all that lived in the wilderness. They lived in the land of the Amorites, and they destroyed by their strength everyone in Heshbon. Passing over Jordan, they possessed all the hill country. They cast out before them the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Jebusite, the Shechemite, and all the Girgashites, and they lived in that country many days. And while they didn't sin before their God, they prospered, because God who hates iniquity was with them. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many severe battles, and were led captives into a land that was not theirs. The temple of their God was razed to the ground, and their cities were taken by their adversaries. And now they have returned to their God, and have come up from the dispersion, where they were dispersed, and have possessed Jerusalem, where their sanctuary is, and are settled in the hill country, for it was desolate. And now, my Lord and Master, if there is any error in this people, and they sin against their God, we will find out what this thing is in which they stumble, and we will go up and overcome them. But if there is no lawlessness in their nation, let my Lord now pass by, lest their Lord defend them, and their God before them, and we will be a reproach before all the earth." It came to pass, when Achior had finished speaking these words, all the people standing around the tent complained. The great men of Holofernes, and all who lived by the seaside and in Moab, said that he should be cut to pieces. For, they said, "We will not be afraid of the children of Israel, because, behold, they are a people that has no power nor might to make the battle strong. Therefore now we will go up, and they will be a prey to be devoured by all your army, Lord Holofernes. The Book of Judith, chapter 6. And when the disturbance of the men that were around the council had ceased, Holofernes, the chief captain of the army of Ashur, said to Achior and to all the children of Moab, before all the people of the foreigners, "And who are you, Achior, and the mercenaries of Ephraim, that you have prophesied amongst us as today, and have said that we should not make war with the race of Israel, because their God will defend them? And who is God but Nebuchadnezzar? He will send forth his might, and will destroy them from the face of the earth, and their God will not deliver them. But we, his servants, will strike them as one man. They will not sustain the might of our cavalry. For with them we will burn them up. Their mountains will be drunken with their blood. Their plains will be filled with their dead bodies. Their footsteps will not stand before us, but they will surely perish, says King Nebuchadnezzar, Lord of all the earth. For he said, the words that I have spoken will not be in vain. But you, Achior, hireling of Ammon, who have spoken these words in the day of your iniquity, will see my face no more from this day, until I am avenged of the race of those that came out of Egypt. And then the sword of my army, and the multitude of those who serve me, will pass through your sides, and you will fall amongst their slain when I return. Then my servants will bring you back into the hill country, and will set you in one of the cities by the passes. You will not perish until you are destroyed with them. And if you hope in your heart that they will not be taken, don't let your countenance fall. I have spoken it, and none of my words will fall to the ground." Then Holofernes commanded his servants who waited in his tent to take Achior and bring him back to Bethulia, and deliver him into the hands of the children of Israel. So his servants took him and brought him out of the camp into the plain, and they moved from the midst of the plains into the hill country, and came to the springs that were under Bethulia. When the men of the city saw them on the top of the hill, they took up their weapons and went out of the city against them to the top of the hill. Every man that used a sling kept them from coming up, and threw stones at them. They took cover under the hill, bound Achior, cast him down, left him at the foot of the hill, and went away to their lord. But the children of Israel descended from their city, and came to him, untied him, led him away into Bethulia, and presented him to the rulers of their city, which were in those days Ozias the son of Micah of the tribe of Simeon, and Cabris the son of Gothoniel, and Carmis the son of Melchiel. Then they called together all the elders of the city, and all their young men ran together with their women to the assembly. They set Achior in the midst of all their people. Then Ozias asked him what had happened. He answered and declared to them the words of the council of Holofernes, and all the words that he had spoken in the midst of the princes of the children of Ashur, and all the great words that Holofernes had spoken against the house of Israel. Then the people fell down and worshipped God, and cried, saying, O Lord God of heaven, behold their arrogance, and pity the low estate of our race. Look upon the face of those who are sanctified to you this day. They comforted Achior, and praised him exceedingly. Then Ozias took him out of the assembly into his house, and made a feast for the elders. They called on the God of Israel for help all that night.